Labor Committee meeting this morning, and we're pleased to have Ms. Jackie Turner, Executive Director of Employment Security. She's got some staff members here with us. We thought that it would be good for the committee to get some information firsthand from Employment Security concerning our trust fund for unemployment insurance. So Ms. Turner is going to share some information with us about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the minimum wage, and she will hopefully offer some perspectives for us to consider. And also we're going to talk a little bit about the agency's activities with regard to the pandemic. So without any further ado, we'll ask Mr. Turner to as they say in the church, to come in our own way. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go first to the handout. Senator Horn and I spoke last week about the reminding us of some legislation that's already passed here in the legislature, and I wanted to give you some updates on the programs in the CARES Act, what is already ended, what remains, about the Lost Wages Assistance Program that President Trump signed in a memorandum on August 8th, and then some interesting financial information and facts about claims and trust fund balance and stuff. So if you will join me in looking at the handout, and I'll try, if it's okay with you, I'll try to just go through it and then we'll go back if that's okay. But stop me at any time.
That's fine.
Of course, MDS, or Employment Security, is responsible for paying unemployment benefits to those who are qualified. In Mississippi, like all other states, we have a trust fund, and Mississippi employers pay into that trust fund through different kinds of rates and things. When we started this venture back in March, I've got this on the note on the printout, but on March 14th, our trust fund balance was at $706,452,872. So that's where, when we started the pandemic, that's where our trust fund sat. In the top 5, I think 4th most solvent trust fund in the United States. It stood the test of time through the recession, the Great Recession, in the in the 2000s, and up into we hit a boom of economy, and it sat at 706 million. So back in March, April, the CARES Act was enacted by Congress. And in that act, there were several programs related to unemployment for individuals who qualify, and it became the responsibility of the employment agencies around the country to administer these programs. While I stood before all of you some months ago, and it has been extremely difficult journey for all of us, for us implementing the different programs and meeting the customers' needs, and the customers having to wait in some cases. But I want to say throughout all of that, it might not have seemed like it in the beginning or whatever, but Mississippi has done quite well with its implementation of the different programs related to other states. We've done quite well with implementing the programs, and I was on a call yesterday, and one of the states, I can't remember who it was, and this number 2 on here, pandemic unemployment assistance, that is the program that the CARES Act for people who don't normally qualify for UI, like 1099 workers and things. And they were saying that they still were not paying out this program. So I was like, wow, that seems crazy to me, but legacy systems exist across the country, and we were fortunate enough to have one of the more modern unemployment systems in the country. But when you take into account one program coming after another, and they all have to work together, intertwine together, it's been quite a task. But this group of people here and all the people back at Employment Security, the temporary workers, the partners, volunteers, they've done an incredible job of.
Now, Jackie, I know Mr. Rush here.
Yes.
Who's your other staff member?
I apologize for not introducing them. Timothy Rush is the Deputy Executive Director of what we call the Reemployment Assistance Program or Unemployment Program at MDS. And John Garrett is our Deputy Executive Director, General Counsel, who both these gentlemen are experts in the unemployment program. And I'm very proud to have them with me here today.
Thank you.
So the CARES Act was implemented along with our regular unemployment program, and these first 4 programs here were implemented alongside our regular unemployment program. The first program, Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, was what some call, I think there's been some varying degrees of what people call it, but the extra $600 that individuals were receiving, it was Federal Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, and it ended at the end of July. Pandemic Unemployment Assistance is similar to a disaster unemployment program, but that is related to this pandemic because it's a disaster, and it continues on and it ends at the end of December. And primarily it's for those who don't normally fall under eligibility for the regular unemployment program, and it's directly related to COVID. They're unemployed in this pandemic arena because of the COVID crisis. The third one I put in here because it's not necessarily, well, it is a program, but it's the fact that in the CARES Act, they are funding the first week of when people receive unemployment. Typically in states, and including Mississippi, we had a 1-week waiting period, and we waived that 1-week waiting period, as most, if not all states did, because the federal government came in and said, we're going to pay that 1 week. And so all of the money for the first week has come from this number 3. And the fourth on here is Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation. So in Mississippi, someone filing unemployment has up to 26 weeks to receive unemployment. And this program on number 4 allows for participants in the regular unemployment program or others to get an additional 13 weeks if they're eligible, if they still find themselves in a situation where they aren't able to work for whatever reason. It allows for an additional 13 weeks of unemployment insurance, and that ends at the end of December as well.
So this program also started in the spring?
It did. All of these did. Okay. All 4 of these are related to the CARES Act. Of course, you know, the CARES Act had lots of things in it, and provisions for unemployment were also in there, and that's what, in these programs, and that was what we had to administer. And then and the $600 ended, number 1, what we call FPUC, ended at the end of July. Congress was unable at that point to reach a compromise on a continuation program, so on August 8th, President Trump signed a presidential memorandum enacting the Lost Wages Assistance Program, and it's FEMA money. And it provided for an additional $300 a week. And there's some eligibility criteria. You had to have a weekly benefit amount of $100 or more, and it had to be COVID related. So at this point, Mississippi has applied for and received 6 weeks of lost wages assistance money, the additional $300. And we are told that it hasn't come out officially, but we are told that even though the parameters of the program said that it could go to the end of December or when the money was not available anymore. But we're told verbally on Zooms and conference calls that after the 6 weeks, which we've already received and are paying out, there are still some people that have to be paid out, so, but we have funding still to do that, but it has to be related to the first 6 weeks. We are told that this program well, there will be no more funding after the 6 weeks. That has not come out officially, but it has been verbally announced nationally.
Okay. Let me ask you about that. I think when the president signed that executive order, he said states could pay, it was a $400 a week benefit, but the federal government was going to pay $300, and it said the states could pick up the other $100.
Well, there were two or three different options that states had. And, well, there were 3 options. You didn't have to accept it, and there were 2 states, I believe, that did not apply for the lost wages. Another option was apply for this FEMA money is a matching program, and one of the criteria was asked for $400. They would pay $300, and then the rest would have to come from your state. Mississippi applied for the 3rd option, where we paid $300 to the recipients, and we still have to match it, but the matching money is available. You don't use the money, but you can use it as a match, and the unemployment trust fund dollars have been able to be used as a match. That was we felt, the option that we all could know that we had the money to fund it, because you had to know up front.
But this is without drawing down the $300 from the unemployment trust fund?
Correct. This all comes from this lost wages assistance program. Okay, so like I said a little bit ago, at March 14th, the trust fund balance sat at $706.4 million. And as of September 22nd, the trust fund balance, the next block, sits at $422.9 million. Now, that includes $181,775,000 that you all passed from state CARES Act funds. So in this little section here, I broke it down to say, if that infusion had not been made, the trust fund balance would sit at $241 million, which is dangerously low. So we thank you for infusing $181,775,000 to give us that balance of $422.9 million. Remember, we started out at 706, and we are down to $422.9 million. This next one is very interesting, and this is billions. We've paid out in unemployment funds from all these different programs in that last figure between the lost wages, and I have a Q on the end of that for some reason. We have paid out between the Mississippi Unemployment Trust Fund, the CARES Act programs, and the Lost Wages Assistance Program, $3.1 billion since March 2nd. Billion, that's like what? Is that half the state budget, or it's an incredible amount?
State general fund budget.
So, you asked me about number of claims filed. There's several different programs, but it's well over 500,000, between 500 and 600,000 people who have filed claims during this time. And on a given week before this, it was about 1,000, 1,000 a week, 52,000 a year.
Can you give us an estimate of how many claims recipients are still receiving benefits?
Continued claims are still at 100 and something, 100 between 100 and around 150,000 that are continuing to file claims. It varies every week. And I say that because some weeks people, you know, you could still be filing claims, and one week you may make enough money that you don't receive it, and then you can file again the next week for those that are in that particular arena. So 150 to 200,000 remaining that are still drawing. A couple of things that have happened, of course, were the $600 ended at the end of July. The work search requirements that had been waived by Governor Reeves went back into effect August 8th. That's a normal part of the unemployment program, but they were reinstated August 8th, and then the $300 kicked in during that time, but the word, the word is filtering out, I suppose, that that $300 has ended for all practical purposes. We have not, we've toyed with this, but we have not received official guidance from FEMA, but we feel like we need to say something, but yet we don't have official guidance. And I sent an email asking, and it was not exactly the words I was looking for to give me the go-ahead to, make a press release or something saying it had ended, but
for all intents and purposes, it's ended. So not as of today, but today, the only thing someone filing for unemployment benefits can rely on is the customary state portion of the benefit.
the customary state portion, except these programs,
Like, 235 a week.
135, and so the regular unemployment program, we have some disasters that have gone on, and for tornadoes and flooding. We have this number 2 and number 4 that also play into that, but it's your state, it's still your state amount. It's not the extra $600 or your $300, so you are correct. The unemployment rate, and it's supposed to be 7.9%. The unemployment rate was released last Friday for August, and it was 7.9%. They always adjust it. It comes out, and it's called a preliminary estimate. And when we look at this again next month, it will be adjusted, most likely to something else. But before the pandemic started for March, the unemployment rate sat, and in the months prior to that, it was 4 point something, then it rose a little bit, and it was 5.1% in March, and it went up to 16.3% in April, and the August sits at 7.9 preliminary. Any questions so far?
Questions from the committee?
So the last thing I wanted to before, as you go into your session again in the next few days, I wanted to remind you all that of the legislative measures that pertaining to MDS and COVID, as we see them, that were passed during the 2020 session early. Of course, House Bill 1784 transferred the $181,775,000 to the trust fund, and that has been deposited and reflected in those numbers on the front page. House Bill 1795, $55 million in state CARES Act money for what you may have seen advertised as Reskill Mississippi program. It goes to MDS, the 4 local workforce areas, and then on to community colleges and OJT employers for on-the-job training.
On the Reskill Mississippi program, I noticed that Copiah-Lincoln, for example, offers free training to anybody who wants to sign up. Do all of the community colleges offer these Reskill Mississippi programs at no cost?
If they are offering programs, and they're all supposed to be doing that, I don't have that degree of detail, but through this CARES Act funding, the whole point was to get equipment, classrooms, and provide the training for and relate it to COVID.
So an institution might choose a different route for using the money that they have, that they've been given out of this 49 million. So does the agency have a list of how each institution has decided to use this portion of the money?
We do.
Could you provide that to the committee?
And we also have been, Charlie Rome is our legislative budget analyst, and we provide a summary report to him each week. It can, but
So Charlie has the information?
he has a summary report by college. It doesn't have the detail. I think we did send him the detail, but I'll send it to you, but then I'll check to see what Charlie has on a regular basis, so you can ask that for me.
Thank you.
Senate Bill 3046, it's not related to employment security, but it's the broadband bill, and it says by October 1, if there's any unobligated money, it would go into the trust fund. House Bill 1805 was, I'll call it a catch-all bill that was passed at the very end of the session, what I believe is different bills that had state's CARES Act funding in them, that it would revert to the trust fund. If it's not spent by December 28th, it would go by December 30th. I'll just say this, that's real tight time. Now, I just want to assure you that if we get the money from our treasury, we can turn it around and get it deposited into the trust fund within a 24-hour period. But if things are known before December 30th, that would be most helpful. Senate Bill 3051, this was a bill sponsored by Senator Parker, and this was in our conversations about the concern about employer tax rates for 2021, specifically in the midst of the COVID crisis. So Senate Bill 3051 for the 2021 tax rates sets the general experience rate at 0.2%, which is what it is now for 2020. And it also, for the individual experience rating for employers, eliminates the COVID time period in the calculation of the individual experience rate. We eliminated the period from March 8th through December 31st. And that December 31st goes to the fact that, we felt like it would still be going on during that time period and didn't want to take it any further because of the unknowns. So as it stands right now, in calculating the individual tax rate, that period will be omitted, and which means that employers will not be penalized for individuals filing claims against them during this COVID period, which makes it all the more important for us to get an additional infusion of trust fund dollars to help the solvency of the trust fund, along with the employer tax rates being fairly consistent and not all of a sudden jump high to meet the conditions and requirements for the trust fund to be solvent. So those are the legislative measures that relate to us as we see them specifically for the Unemployment Trust Fund.
So we're continuing the Mississippi Works Fund, the WET Fund, the SWIB funding.
That 0.2%
Yeah.
is training tax for those things.
Okay.
Any more questions about the trust fund?
Yeah, the, as far as you know, on 3046 has the broadband programs funds, have they been all expended, or?
I don't
You have any
know.
idea?
I don't know. I mean, just in general, I have had questions from, of course, Charlie Rome and the Lieutenant Governor's Chief of Staff, and Trey Dillinger, the Speaker's Chief of Staff, about trust fund and the balance, the same kind of questions you had about trust fund balance and how much we needed. When months ago when this started, I submitted a letter to the Lieutenant Governor and Speaker asking for $500 million infusion into the trust fund. 181.7 has already been infused, and based on the current information we have, another 300 million is, we still remain right on target with what we feel in our best actuarial analysis that is needed still to see us, Pat. And it's not just about right now, because we've set these rates for 2021 to help, but it's needed to see us past 2020, even 2021, and on into 2022, 23, to with the unknowns that we have.
So, with all of these program dollars flowing back to employment security at a certain point, if they're unexpended, the balances would go into the trust fund account. Do you think they will get, by the end of this year, anywhere close to that $706 million?
With an infusion, okay, so we sit at 422 million, and if we get another 300 million infusion, then that puts us a little over 700 million, and with what we're paying out, which is decreased, it will get us back in the arena of what we started off with before the pandemic.
Now, I'm trying to see, I don't really recall the bill number for the small business, the Back to Business Grant Program. Is this one of the bills that's listed here in
I think so.
House Bill 1805?
Intended, I think, to be a mechanism to pick up what was left at the very
are
end.
these all of the CARES Act pieces of legislation?
It is yes.
Okay, so it is in there somewhere. Okay. Well, I think you'll be in good shape for the trust fund, since we're not coming anywhere close to spending that money right now.
There are other, competing interests and requests, and of course, that's not for me to say, but I do tell you that the unemployment trust fund replenishment for COVID-related is a approved expenditure by the Federal Treasury and our Department of Labor, and we can get that money spent within a 24-hour turnaround by depositing it into the trust fund.
Right.
So.
So what about, besides the monies in 1795, are there any other, and besides what's in the wet fund and so forth, What else are we doing as it relates to training of workers who might have been displaced or put out of a job?
We have funding for, well, let me back up. Our regular fund, at MDS, we're not just the unemployment agency, we're the employment agency as well. So on a regular basis, we have funding to help match people with jobs and jobs with people. That's our job match system, and every state is required to have one. That's the Wagner-Pfizer Act, and the Wagner-Pfizer funding comes to us at Employment Security, and we administer that. So we have a job match system that right now has 40-something thousand jobs listed, 46,000, I believe. So we have that on an ongoing basis. We also have Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funding, and that funding is to work with the Wagner-Pfizer funds and other programs, and when people come into our system, whether it be virtually, in person, online, they are able to get into training programs. It's administered through the 4 local workforce areas. By law, Employment Security gets it, and then a majority of it is administered through the 4 local workforce areas, and that's training dollars. So that is free money to students who are willing to go back and train, and each of the 4 local workforce areas has a little bit different policies, but there's money there for that. We also have on-the-job training dollars for employers, and those are administered through MDS through the 4 local workforce areas as well. We have several other smaller programs with tax credits and work opportunity tax credits and federal bonding programs for those employers who might want to take a chance on someone who may be an ex-offender. They can apply for a bond and take a chance on an ex-offender. We have several of those programs.
What's that program called?
It's a federal bonding program. We have to apply for it, but employers can, that is an option for them to apply, work with us and apply for a bond to cover them in the event so that they can take. And
this is specifically to assist in the employment of ex-offenders?
Those who have challenges, but more likely than other or areas, ex-offenders. Whatever reason you might be worried about taking a chance on someone. And also, we have sometimes, those are our main recurring programs. But right now, and we also do have labor market information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We do all of that statistical analysis for the Mississippi Bureau of Labor Statistics, and so we have tons and tons of labor market information out on our website and for whoever needs it. And then right now we have a program going on with the drug courts for helping when clients are at risk of going to incarceration or something that's happening to them. For part of this money is to train drug court employees to help get them on a path of going through some of these training programs and all. So that's a funding opportunity that came down from the federal government, and it's just getting going.
Is this COVID related?
It's not COVID related. Do you want to know COVID related?
No, I just was curious.
That's not COVID related, but we also have another COVID related program for cleanup after COVID, meaning not exactly cleanup from the normal standpoint, but potentially some contact tracing money. We've asked Department of Labor for us to be able to partner with our Department of Health to provide funding for them for contact tracers. Temporary jobs to help fill in when some people might not be able to work because of COVID and all. It's temporary jobs for people during this COVID crisis.
Now, I mean, is this the contact tracing that we're still talking about, or?
Contact tracing is one of the options, and we've requested Department of Labor, we have not received an answer, to allow us to take a portion of that funding and us partner with our Mississippi Department of Health for some contact tracing funding. We have not heard from them yet on that.
Okay.
But that is it. We've already talked to Dr. Dobbs and his staff about it, and they're eager to use it, and I figured we knew it was something that was needed, so.
And what's the total amount of that request?
I think it's 3 million, but I'll verify that.
Yeah. Could you also get the committee information on these WEOP funds? Well, actually, all of the money that has been forwarded to the 4 workforce areas. Could you just get us a total, a breakdown of the dollars that have gone to each of the 4 workforce areas?
Send it to you?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
If you can just coordinate that with Becky, and she'll get it to the members of the committee.
That particular funding opportunity was directly related to COVID. We have, there periodically and quite often Department of Labor will have like one-time funding opportunities, but that one time, it's not recurring programs, but they'll have funding opportunities, and that period may go over a span of years, even though it's not a mandated recurring program. One of those is Registered Apprenticeship Program. Employers here in Mississippi do apprenticeship type programs all the time. They may not call it apprenticeship, but when you are training your employees for a particular job, it's some type of apprenticeship, but registered apprenticeship, it seems to be a harder sell to employers in Mississippi. So we have funding to help encourage employers to register their programs. And what registered apprenticeship programs means that there's paperwork involved, and an employer agrees to be a registered apprenticeship company, and when that employee goes through that program, they have a credential that goes with them throughout wherever they go. It's that particular program is registered in databases and all, and when a person receives that credential, then they carry that with them throughout their life as being able to take it from one company to another. Those are the main programs that we have right now.
So are the community colleges the only entities that you work with as it relates to offering training?
They are not the only, particularly in the WIOA, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, in this $55 million CARES Act, it was in the legislation it said community colleges. But on our ongoing programs, particularly the WIOA program, any entity interested in having programs as one of the eligible programs in the program has to submit that program to their 4 local workforce, to one of the, and it's a registration period. It's called the Eligible Training Provider List, and programs get registered in that eligible list. Most of them are community colleges, but there are some proprietary truck driving. There's others on there. So if a client comes in and wants to use wants to go back to school, it's called ITA, or Individual Training Account. You may have heard that term. So when they apply for an ITA, the program has to be on that eligible list. And that can be seen on our website, eligible training provider list. And like I said, most of them are community colleges, but there's some university types, and there's some just other training types, including, and I always use truck driving, because that's one that we always
So
have.
someone who might have a truck driving school or CNA school or LPN or something like that, some sort of healthcare focused training, they can apply to one of the 4 workforce.
And there's a time
areas.
period, and
And
it's required documents to,
right, I mean, they somehow have to be certified to
this
provide
local
the
workforce
training.
area looks at all that and certifies the programs to be on the list.
Okay. But the point of contact is one of the 4 workforce areas. Okay.
But if anyone needs help with what those time periods are and all, I'll be glad to.
Okay, one other good thing, Ms. Turner, could you provide the list of the 4 workforce training areas and who the contact person is at each of them? Okay. Any questions of the committee? Okay. All right, and so you're done with this part? Okay. So have you had a chance to look at the issue of the minimum wage in the state and where we are with that, and any scenarios if we decided that we wanted to raise the minimum wage, what its impact would be?
Well, Employment Security doesn't have jurisdiction at all over the minimum wage, and as you all know, that in Mississippi, we don't have our state wage and hour. It's the wage and hour division of the U.S. Department of Labor, and it's located, I think, in the federal building. So we get calls all the time asking for things about wage and hour and all, and we refer them to the wage and hour. So as far as any of that, I don't have any recommendations, but I talked to the staff. We had a meeting yesterday, and we were talking about, of course, it's $7.25 an hour. From our perspective, with these programs that we were just talking about, and on-the-job training programs that employers have and all, and we use WIOA funds for that, those programs, which are also administered by the 4 local workforce areas working with us, and we know that when employers are signing up to ask for on-the-job training funds through the WIOA program, the minimum that they allow the employer to pay through this program, because we have to have income, we have to meet income guidelines for the federal government, and to meet those guidelines and meet our federal performance, and it has to do with poverty levels and some calculations, but the minimum wage that we allow an employer to pay an individual through that program is $9, and it goes up to at least $12. And that's significant, I think, in this particular scenario, because
And what is this program called?
the on-the-job training program from the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, that's through the 4 local workforce areas as well. We are their state entity, and we provide policy and guidance, but those are intended to be locally driven. You're familiar?
So the minimum, while the employee is in the OJT program, is $9 an hour?
That's the minimum, and so when we're working with a company and they are interested in providing, like, it pays 50% of a person's salary while they're training, so it helps the employer out.
Right.
But we tell the employer, we're not going to help you subsidize your program if you're not paying at least $9, because thereby $7.25 minimum wage isn't going to cut it, because for us to be able to meet the standards for the lower living standard income level and things of that nature, they have to pay them at least $9 an hour, and it goes up to at least $12. $9 is in the Delta workforce area, and the others go up to $12. So I thought that was of significance in this conversation, just by the very fact that we can't allow minimum wage to happen in this program because it doesn't provide what's necessary to pull them out of what's considered low-income individual. Which is showing me who had state minimum wage. Arkansas, Florida, Georgia have state minimum wage, and Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, and our region do not have.
But Arkansas, Georgia, and Florida do.
Arkansas, Florida, Georgia have a state-required minimum wage. Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee do not.
Thank you. Outside the region, do most states have a minimum wage?
Yeah, yes, I believe they do. We can find that information out as well.
I'd be interested in that as well.
And well, I'll be happy specifically, I mean, it's not minimum wage, of course, it's not our purview at MDS, but since Department of Labor is our federal granting agency, I'll be glad to try to help with whatever you need there, so.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, is there anything else, Ms. Turner?
Not on minimum wage.
Ma'am?
Not on minimum wage. You had asked.
No, I mean, just anything else. Have we covered all that we talked about last week?
The other thing you mentioned was workers' comp, and
Well, we don't need to deal with that. We had a full day with that yesterday. I'm
Mark
sorry
Henry and I
for
had
the
a
misunderstanding.
okay. Mark Henry and I had who is, of course, was my executive director. We had a conversation about.
Oh, the training piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, please.
Mark and I had a detailed conversation on Monday about at workers' comp. People have been injured in some kind of way, and the whole goal is to get them back working as well, which is what our mission is also at Employment Security. So we talked about the fact that in these the training programs that I described, or our work search requirements and all these things, if we could get the workers' comp customers in the right path to use or to know what services are available, be offered those services that we have, that would be a long way into helping them know that there's a job match system that they can go to, know that there are training programs that they can get back into if they maybe can't do what they were doing prior to their workers' comp issue. And so that's all that's what we do. And also in WIOA, the act itself, it requires partnership in certain programs. That partnership is MDES, Mississippi Department of Rehab Services, Mississippi Community College Board Adult Ed Program, and Department of Human Services, TANF and SNAP. And we have a way that we refer customers to each other. Our systems, we have what we call a hub system, that all of our systems ask questions of customers that come in for the first time. Do you need help finding a job? Do you have a disability that you need help with? And if, depending on how they answer these questions, it refers them to that other partner. So
Okay,
if we
and
could plug.
You mentioned MDES, DHS, rehab services, and what was
And
the?
Community College Board Adult Ed Program. So I'm thinking about the workers' comp clients, which are probably the very same clients that may need their high school equivalency. They may need Department of Rehab help because they've been injured or something, and now they need those services. So that, if we could organize and get a way for them to come to MDS, we could get those 6 questions asked for them. We could provide them services and then refer them to other entities if they needed help in another area. So
How is one awarded an ITA?
How is one awarded an ITA? First, of course, it has to be on that eligible training provider list. A customer comes to us, whether it's virtually, in person, online, and they are interested in a training program. And they can do all that through our website and in one of our WIN job centers around the state.
Let me rephrase the question. Are there any income requirements for a person to qualify for an individual training account?
There are no income requirements, even though the focus is on lower level, but there are no income requirements. If there is high demand, and it depends on the economy and the ebb and flow of the funding that comes to us, like each local area has their own policies. Even though there's no required income level, they may have a stricter policy if their money is tight. But it's conceivable that someone might come in and if the, say, registered nurse is on the eligible training provider list, they could very well get funding to help them get through that program.
So someone who's a workers' comp recipient and who maybe isn't interested or able to go back to that old job, they can reach out to one of the 4 local workforce areas.
Well, they wouldn't have to, this is all complicated, they wouldn't have to reach out to those 4 they could go to our website and look at, I need a job, or I'm interested in training, go to one of the WIN job centers, or look on our website for the first interaction with those training programs.
Okay, and is there a wide breadth and type of job training that's available?
It is.
Okay. Thank you.
The 4 local workforce areas also try to make sure when that they have in each of their area their sectors, healthcare, manufacturing, and sometimes they will try to focus people in the areas of where they can actually get a job. The high demand sectors in their area. So it's all those things happening, but it is still free choice of the participant.
That might be something that the legislature could become more actively involved in, as far as requiring that someone who's had a debilitating illness or accident on the job, rather, that they would be, these 4 agencies would work with them the same way that they work with the other folks in the WEOP program. Is that correct?
WIOA.
Well, yeah, I think,
WIOA.
yeah. So it's Workforce Innovation Opportunity
Act.
Act. Okay, I thought it was program.
It might, just a suggestion, you might say, require them to register with, in the Mississippi Department, register with us. And then if they do, there's 6 questions that I was talking about will be asked, and it'll refer, or you can name the 4. We're the 4 core partners of the.
I'm asking for a lot of backup information. Can we get those 6 questions?
Yeah, sure can. And these 6 questions are in each of those 4 core partners' systems.
Right.
The first time someone goes into the system.
Okay.
And when we share information back at, like if it's referred over to MDS, then each agency decides how they handle those referrals. And then we are able to see some information, not confidential information, but information about that customer to help not have to key everything back in and those kind of things and all. So we're just getting, it took about 1.5 years or so, 2 years to get everything programmed and everybody up and running, so it's just getting better now, perfected.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Well, we appreciate it. Does anyone on the committee have any questions of Ms. Turner before she departs? Okay. Well,
Thank you.
we thank you so much. This is good information. We appreciate the update. I think you're going to get close to that 706 by the end of the year, the way we're going.
It'll help all of us.
We did find out that the MDA Back to Business Grant Program is not one of the bills listed here. That's Senate Bill 2772. However, in that legislation, if the money is not expended by October 1st, then the legislature has a chance to take another bite at the apple. But if it's not any unexpended funds that have not been diverted by the legislature by November 1st, it goes to the governor, and the governor decides where the money goes. And we know he's got a warm and fuzzy place in his heart for the Unemployment Trust Fund. So.
Yes. So we may get a lot, huh? No. I think this House Bill 1805 were ones maybe that didn't have the governor scenario in it. Now that I think about back what was happening during that time, they were trying to catch some that had some lingering what's going to happen when.
Right. But
thank you for that.
we appreciate the information, and we'll look forward to working with you going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So much. Members of the committee, we appreciate y'all's participation today, and we'll have some discussions maybe later in the fall as to maybe potential legislation that we'll be looking at. And unless there are any further questions, I think Senator Simmons moves that we rise and report. Thank you. Appreciate it.